Last week we looked at 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 1 through 11. Let's go ahead and go there first. 1 Corinthians chapter 12. Still not picking up very good. Okay, all right. All right, 1 Corinthians chapter 12. And this section is regarding spiritual gifts. And we looked at that last week. And the important thing in this section is that God has given the church operations. We have jobs to do. Think of it like you're going to start a city, right? You're going to build a city. If you're going to build out a city, different people are going to have different jobs, right? There's different projects that need to happen. Is that true for the church? Does the church have different projects, different things that it needs to do? Yes, in each community throughout the world. We have different operations, things that we need to be doing. And to accomplish those things, you have different administrations. You have jobs. You'll need foremen. You'll need workers. You'll need people to do this, people to do that, right? You have different jobs in order to accomplish the different operations. And then God gives also those who are doing those different jobs, what? Gifts to accomplish those administrations, to accomplish those operations. And who is in charge? God is. In fact, that's what we looked at. If you look at chapter 12 of 1 Corinthians, and we're going to start in verse 4, it says, "Now there are diversities of gifts, but the same Spirit. There are differences of administrations, but the same Lord. And there are diversities of operations, but it is the same God which worketh all in all. But the manifestation of the Spirit is given to every man to profit" who? Everyone. So God is the one, the Spirit, the Son, the Father are all working to accomplish its will, and it's giving out these things, these responsibilities, these abilities, these jobs in order to accomplish His will in this world to profit everybody, right? In fact, look at verse 11. "But all these work that one and the selfsame Spirit, dividing to every man severally as He will." So it's His desires and His wishes as to what we do and the gifts we're given to accomplish those things, right? So who can complain? No. Can we ask for more? Yes. In fact, what is the one gift everybody should be seeking? Better gift of prophecy, being able to tell people the truth of the Word of God, because it is the power, right? It's the power to really change as the Holy Spirit uses it to change the hearts of people. So we looked at that last week, and we see the church has jobs, has administrations, has gifts, and God is working in His church. But how can it possibly fall apart then? How can it, if God's doing this, if He's putting people where He needs them and using people like He needs them, why does the church have such a hard time getting things done? Because we are people. The church would be a lot better if we didn't have to deal with all these people, right? Everything would be better if we didn't have to deal with all these people. This restaurant would be so much more popular if there wasn't so many people here. Yogi Berra. Classic. Right? So, one of the problems is in order for it to all work, and think of it as a body. That's what we're going to look at tonight. We are how many bodies? The church. One. Now, we think that we are different bodies, right? There is the Baptist body, the Methodist body, the Catholic body, this body, that body, this body, right? We're all different bodies, and each body is in a different country and in a different state, and we're all different bodies, and this is one body, and Capital's another body, and that church is another. And we think of it that way, but are we? No. We are one body, the body of Christ, the church, one true church in this world, right? Church of believers. We are one body. We need to act then as what? One body. Because this is when the church begins to fail. And you want to think about it this way. Think of your own body. When does your body fail? Not when everybody has a job. Not when everybody is placed in the right spot. It's when what? They fail to work together. Right? That's the problem, right? In your body, you've got fingers, you got hands, you got arms, you got legs, you got a heart, you got lungs. They're all in the right spot, right? They all have the right job, right? They're all placed there where they're supposed to be, yet if one of them's not doing their job, they're not working together, they're not talking to each other the right way, what happens? It fails. It's not as effective. And this point is so important to the church that the apostles spend an awful lot of time, and so does Jesus. They will know you are Christians by your what? Love for one another. That leads to what? Unity, working together. And that's the key, right? That we need to be one together, me working together, me to be loving one another, forgiving one another. We need to do this. We need to be one body, act as one body, because we are one body, right? And that's what we're going to look at tonight. In fact, our key verses or section tonight is Romans chapter 12, verses 3 through 5. So I would recommend you keep something over there in 1 Corinthians where we were. But let's go on over to Romans. Romans chapter 12. Anybody know how chapter 12 starts? Romans chapter 12? Beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies. He's talking personally, right? This body, this one you got, present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. Not be conformed to this world. Don't be acting and thinking like this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your what? Mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. So he starts with individually. Individually, we need to present our bodies a living sacrifice unto God, right? But then he moves into what? The body. The church. Verse 3, verse 3, for I say, through the grace given unto me, to every man that is among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think soberly, according as God hath dealt to every man the measure of faith. For as we have many members in one body. So think of it as I individually am sacrificing myself to God to do his will, right? And he places me in the body for a job to do, right? And that's great, but I still have to do what? I still have to work with others, don't I? I still have to humble myself. Not more highly than I ought to think, but to think soberly, according as God hath dealt to every man a measure of faith. Think as God has placed you there. So if you are the big toe, what do you say? I'm sacrificing myself individually for the good of who? Everybody. It may stink down there. That's okay. You're important. How important is your big toe? Go kick something on the way home. That'll tell you. It's pretty important. You'll stumble around for days, right? It is all important. Just as we have many members in one body, and all members have not the same office, same job, same administration, same operations, so we, being many, are one body in Christ, and everyone members one of another. It's not just that we have to like neighbors, right? It's not like we're just neighbors. I'm here and they're there, and I have to generally get along with them. He says we are actually what? Members one of another. That gives more of an idea of being what? Connected. Yes, conjoined. Conjoined. We say that nowadays. Conjoined. So, yeah, we are connected, and we are, aren't we? We are connected because we are one in the body. Even though your big toe may not be actually connected to the heart, are they connected? And is your brain connected to your big toe? And do they all kind of work together? Yes. And that's the thing. The church is the same way. We are one body, and we are connected together, and we need to make sure we are working together with a humble spirit. Sorry. So, Not to think, but to think soberly, accurately, as God has given you a measure of faith, knowing that that's where you need to be, that you are important, you have a job to do, and you are part of something bigger than yourself, right? The church. And that's what we need to do. And a lot of it comes down to, first of all, what? Attitude. How many of you here work for a living? How important is attitude on a team? Anybody ever been on a team with somebody with a bad attitude? Yes. Have you ever been that member on a team with a bad attitude? I hope not. Sometimes it's easy to do, though. so yeah, people have a bad attitude of, well, I want more, or I don't want any, or I don't want to be here, or I'd rather be doing something else, or I shouldn't be stuck here. Does it affect the body? Does it affect the group? And attitude is important. In fact, so important that it's talked about several times. First of all, in this very chapter. Let's go to Romans chapter 12, verses 9 and 10. And here again, we have this concept of love being a big part of it. Chapter 12, verse 9. Let love be without dissimulation. Anybody know what dissimulation means? Basically, it means without hypocrisy, with insincerity, right? Don't let your love be insincere. Let it be from the heart. Let it be real, right? Abhor that which is evil. Cleave to that which is good. Be kindly affectioned one to another with brotherly love and honor, doing what? Preferring one another. So we start here with this attitude. What should our attitude be towards other people? Should our attitude be, it's all about who? Me. It's all about me. It's about what I want to accomplish. It's all about my statistics. It's all about what I'm going to do. It's all about me moving up the ladder. It's all about me. Should that be our attitude? No. Instead, it is to be kindly affectioned one to another with brotherly love, in honor, preferring what? Others. Seeking others' best. Seeking that they accomplish, that they succeed. And we've talked about this before. If you have 10 people in a group, and every single one of them is looking out only for themselves, only caring about their success and relying on themselves to accomplish the task, how many people are helping you? One. You. Right? But if all 10 are concerned about the other person and making sure all of the other people succeed, how many people are looking out for you? 9. Which is better? I know math is hard for some people, but which is better? 1 or 9? 9, very good. The mathematicians back there. Yes, of course, we know that, right? This is what he's talking about. For us to be connected like that, we have to prefer one another, look out for one another, and sincere love for one another. In fact, let's go to Ephesians chapter 4. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 1. Ephesians chapter 4, we're going to start in verse 1. It says, I therefore, the prisoner of the Lord, which kind of goes back to individually, again, who are we sacrificing ourselves to? Who are we yielding to? Yielding to God. Beseech you that you walk worthy of the vocation wherewith you are called. Again, once we accept Jesus Christ, we are all given jobs to do, right? We are given to be part of the operations, the administration, and given the gifts of God, right? With all what? Lowliness and meekness, with patience, forbearing one another in love, endeavoring to keep the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. Our goal is to what? Work together. Keep the body together. Keep it working together. What does that take? It takes patience. It takes meekness. It takes humility. It takes forbearing one another, putting up with each other, for lack of a better term, all right? And just dealing with it. Because how many here have ever known somebody who's irritating and annoying? Somebody just looked at you, by the way. Whoever you are, somebody just looked at you and said, that guy. No, we all are at times, aren't we? And we have to be forgiving of one another and put up with one another and work together. How important is it? Because we need to stay unified. Why? Verse 4. There is one body and one Spirit, even as we are called in one hope of your calling. One Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is above all and through all and in you all. And by the way, who's our boss? That guy, right? And we are all one in him. So we need to work together with an attitude of humility, with an attitude of love, preferring one another. Let's take it one step further. Philippians Chapter 2. Next book, if you're in Ephesians. Philippians Chapter 2, starting in verse 1. Philippians 2, verse 1, if there be therefore any consolation in Christ, if any comfort of love, if any fellowship of the Spirit, if any bowels and mercy, fulfill you my joy, that you be like-minded. Right? Does that mean we have to agree on everything? Absolutely not. We can disagree on all kinds of earthly things, right? Is blue better than orange? Is apple pie better than cherry pie? Is, Democrats, Republicans, this or that, money, we can disagree on all kinds of things. So there's actually people who are Chevy people. We can disagree on that stuff. That's not the like-minded. It's like-minded in the truth, right? It's like-minded in the things that matter, truly matter for eternity, right? Be like-minded. Being of one accord, of one mind, let nothing be done through strife or vainglory, selfishness, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem other better than themselves. Look not every man on his own things, but every man also on the things of others. It comes down to caring about what's going on in other people's lives. And caring, he assumes, you notice here, that we will look on our own things, right? Looking not only on your own thing. We're going to look on our own things. We're going to care about the things going on in our life. But he says, also what? And then, in fact, esteem them and their needs higher than your own, right? Everybody, who here is going through something? Everybody. That's why we need to work together, right? Endeavoring to keep that unity, caring one another. Now, he does something I always think is not necessarily fair. He says our example of this is who? Jesus. So those fair, not fair things. But it's true. Isn't that what Jesus did? Is Jesus greater than us? In what way? Every way. It's not even close. But who did he care more about when he was here? Whose needs did he care about more when he was here? As he was being beaten, as he was being put on a cross, and as he was dying, who did he care about more than himself? All of us. I want to make sure his mother got taken care of. Even he said, forgive them, for they know not what they do. He cared about him. He died for us, right? And if God can do that, if he can lower himself to come down here and think more about us than himself, is it a big thing that we do? He says, well, I'm so much better than they are. No. That's right. When people say I'm better than them, it's like saying, I'm the biggest ant that ever lived, right? Are you really that big? No. No, you're really not impressive. So to look down on anybody and say, oh, my needs come first, no. That doesn't keep the unity, does it? In fact, what things threaten that unity? We see it often. In fact, let's go to 1 Corinthians again. Let's go to 1 Corinthians chapter 1. In fact, the church in Corinth is basically a textbook case of disunity, of how it can go wrong. And in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 11, look what he says. For it hath been declared unto me of you by my brethren, by them which are of the house of Chloe, that there are contentions among you. There are infighting amongst you, divisions among you. Why? Verse 12. Now this I say, that every one of you saith, I am of Paul, and I am of Apollos, and I am of Cephas, who's Peter, and I of Christ. They were doing what? Breaking into, let's be honest, it's cliques. I'm of the Apollos school. I'm of the Paul school. I'm of the Peter pool. And then the most self-righteous said what? I'm of the Jesus school, right? And they started breaking into groups and saying, well, you know, I'm this group and I'm that group. Look what he says to this. Is Christ divided? Is the body divided? Can you imagine if you woke up tomorrow morning and you found out that your right side is fighting against your left side? Because the right side's saying, oh, we're the right side. And they're saying, oh, no, we're the left side. And they started fighting against each other. What would you say? Some would say that's nothing new. It happens every day. Seems like there's a constant battle in my body going on. No, it'd be weird, right? I'm of the leg. I'm of the arm. You know, and this is our group. We're only going to worry about our group. We're not going to worry about that other group. That's a problem, isn't it? It's a problem when the church starts breaking into groups. By the way, has the church historically broken into groups? Yes. In fact, when did it start? When did the church first start breaking into groups? A few days in. In fact, that's why they had to appoint deacons. The very first crisis the church faced was they were breaking into groups. And they were saying, well, these widows are Greek widows. These are Hebrew widows. And we're going to feed the Hebrew widows first and then feed the Greek widows. Was that right? And let's face it, the bottom line is that's the problem with breaking into cliques, isn't it? When you start breaking into cliques, you start thinking one's better than the other, and then you stop working together, right? And you start thinking, well, mine, and me, and mine. How about a country? Is this country breaking into cliques ever? All the time. Is it good for the country to break into cliques and groups? No, it's not good for anybody. If you want a group to be successful, you can't have it breaking into groups like that. In fact, you're a human resources person. What are you always trying to do? Break down the silos. Break down, because in organizations, you break into little groups, and then you're not working together towards the overall purpose. You can't have the church doing that. We need to do a better job of that, don't we? We just call them denominations, but still the same thing. We call them local churches, but it's the same thing, isn't it? We can't break into cliques. What else happens? Let's go to 1 Corinthians chapter 11. We're going to start in verse 17, 1 Corinthians chapter 11. 1 Corinthians 11, verse 17. Now is this that I declare unto you, I praise you not. You're doing something wrong. That you come together not for the better, but for the worse. When they were getting together for church, it was not for the better. How could that possibly be? Because there were divisions. Verse 18. For first of all, when you come together in the church, I hear that there be divisions among you, and I partly believe it. That's the report, I believe it. For there must be also heresies among you, that they which are approved may be made manifest among you. When you come together, therefore, in one place, this is not to eat the Lord's Supper. They would have the communion together, right? And when they had communion, they had the whole meal. So they'd have a meal, and they'd have the communion together, and things like that. Is that a good thing? Unless, what? Verse 21. For in eating, everyone takes before others his own supper, and one is hungry, and another is drunk. What? Have you not houses to eat and to drink in? Or despise you the church of God, and shame them that have not? What shall I say to you? Shall I praise you in this? I praise you not. Because once they were getting together, they said, oh, we're having together. But you know what they would do? Who would go first to eat? The ones who brought the most. Well, I brought the 2 buckets of chicken, so I should go first. So I can make sure I get what I brought. And I brought the biscuits, and I brought this, right? I brought the big old thing of tea, so I should go first. And all the people who brought the food, they'd go first and they'd pile up their plate, right? Pile nice and high and say, I brought this so I can eat as much as I want. And then who's left at the back? The ones that couldn't afford to bring stuff. And they end up leaving with what? Nothing. And so that's called what? Selfishness. Well, I brought it, so I should eat it. Well, why'd you bring it? What does he say? Don't you have houses to eat in? If you want to eat your own food, eat in your own house. You bring it to God's house, it's for who? For everybody. In fact, who should go first? The ones that have the least, right? We should be looking out for another, preferring one another, esteeming others better than yourself, looking out, and this is just selfish. And selfishness, looking out for number one, looking out for me and my interests, can that split the church apart? Clicks, selfishness, and what? Let's go to Romans chapter 14. This is a biggie too. Romans chapter 14, verse 1. Him that is weak in the faith, receive you. Young in the faith or struggling in the faith, bring them in the church, but not to doubtful disputation, not to judge them, not to argue with them, not to run them down. That's not what we're here for, is it? For one believes that he may eat all things, another who is weak eats only herbs. So what should we do? How about some chicken? Want some chicken? How about some chicken? Ooh, this roast beef is so good. Come on, be like us. Be strong like us. Why can't you be more like us? Is that what the church should be doing? No. Let him that eats let not him that eats despise him that eats not, and let not him which eats not judge him that eats, for God hath received him too. And if you're on the side of, well, you can't eat that, should you be sitting there saying, you shouldn't eat that. You shouldn't eat. You offend me if you eat that. Can judging one another split the church up? Yeah, everybody looking into everybody else's business saying, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. Oh, you shouldn't be doing that. I wouldn't be doing that. Who do we belong to? Who's in charge? Who's in charge here? Verse 4, who art thou that judges another man's servant? To his own master he stands or falls. Yea, he shall be holden up, for God is able to make him stand. God will take care of it. If somebody's struggling with something and they're struggling in their faith, God will help them, right? So let's not sit there and judge. And judging can certainly split the church up, can it? How many churches have split? How much has the worldwide church split? Over again, we're not talking about truth. If somebody's running around saying, no, Jesus Christ never died, oh, Jesus Christ is never coming in, Jesus Christ is not God, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about over musical taste. We're talking over clothes that we wear, or the hair that we wear, or this, that, or the other thing. But we will do this, won't we? Back then it was whether you eat meat or not, or whether you worship on Sunday or not, or worship on Saturday, or whether you follow the law or not, right? Should we be judging each other and splitting up over this? We are how many bodies? One body, interworking, and we should be forbearing one another, helping one another, loving one another, right? So therefore, since we are one body, we need to act like one. We need to be one body. In fact, let's see some guidance here from Paul in 1 Corinthians. 1 Corinthians chapter 12. We'll finish up here. Back here in Romans chapter 12, verses 4 and 5, he says the same thing, which is we are one body, right? Well, in Corinthians, he wants to kind of put a little finer point on that. How important is it for all of us to work together and to even embrace each other's differences? Isn't that a novel concept? We all don't have to think the same. We don't all have to look the same. We don't have to do the same things. As long as we are doing what? Following God. believing in God, then we should be able to work together and, in fact, embrace each other's differences so that the body can work. What do I mean by that? Let's go to 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 12. For as the body is one and has many members, many parts, and all the parts of that one body, being many, are one body, so also is Christ. Christ, the church, is one body, but it's many, many people. For by one Spirit we are all baptized into one body, whether we be Jews or Gentiles, whether we be bond or free, and have been all made to drink into one Spirit. For the body is not one member, but what? Many. And let me emphasize this, many different parts, right? Different gifts, different administrations to accomplish different operations, right? If we're all doing the same thing, we will not get there. So we should not judge each other or think we're better than somebody else just because they are different than us. In fact, we should embrace it, realizing God uses all of us where we're at to accomplish His purpose in this world, right? Again, verse 15. If the foot shall say, because I am not the hand, I am not of the body, is it therefore not of the body? Well, of course not. That's stupid. Is the foot part of the body? It's part of my body. I've got two of them. How about you? It's really nice. I have a left and a right, too. It really works well. So should the foot say, well, if I'm not the hand, then I'm worthless. I'm not part of the body. I'm unnecessary. No. How many agree? Raise your hand if you think your foot is important. Little pun there. It's okay. And if the ear shall say, by the way, how does an ear say anything? But if the ear shall say, because I am not the eye, I am not of the body, is it therefore not of the body? Is the ear part of the body? Is the ear an important part of the body? Is the eye also an important part of the body? But let's face it, eyes are pretty important. How many you use your eyes for a lot of things? In fact, the fact that mine are not very good is difficult at times because eyes are really important, but ears are too, aren't they? I kind of like this one because they've realized, especially in sports and things like that, how important the ears are to your ability to see. It's quite a fascinating science, but how they all what? Work together. All of our senses, all of our body parts, all of it work together. So just because you are not the pastor, you are not the teacher, you are not the front, you're just somebody who comes and sits in the pews and learns and prays and things like that. Does that mean you are unimportant or not part of the body or not worth the time? No. Every part is important. Every Christian in the world, from the little 5-year-old who just got saved all the way up to the 99-year-old who's been preaching his entire life, are all what? Paul is no more important than one of the little kids he brings to Christ. They're all have a job, don't they? And all need to be working. Nobody can say, because I am not that, I'm not important. If you're in the church, are you important? Yes, you are. Also, let's keep going. He makes the point. If the whole body were an eye, where would the hearing? And if the whole were hearing, where would the smelling? But now hath God set the members, every one of them, in the body, as it hath pleased Him. Not only are you important, but you're placed there by who? Does God make mistakes? Does God know what He's doing? Yes. You're placed there by God. So no matter where you are, and this is important because in our church, we know a lot of Christians who don't necessarily come, don't necessarily participate like they should, right? So who does that hurt? Not only hurts them, but it hurts who? Everybody. Everybody needs to be doing their job because who's important? Everybody's important. Every Christian is important to the working of the body. Let's look at the next, verse 21. And the eye cannot say unto the hand, I have no need of thee, nor again the head to the feet, I have no need of you. This is kind of reversing it. Nobody can say I'm completely unnecessary because I'm not that. In the same way, the people at the top can't sit there and say what? I don't need you. Right? Wouldn't that be funny if a pastor just got up some Sunday morning and said, I don't need you all anymore because you're not the pastor? How long would that church exist? Not long. What would be the point? Right? So nobody can sit there and say you're unnecessary. You can't turn to anybody in the church. You can't turn to any Christian and say you're not needed in this church. You are needed, right? Verse 22, nay, much more those members of the body which seem to me more feeble are necessary. In fact, the ones who are younger in the faith, those are the ones who are struggling, the ones who are caught up in sin, the ones that are hurting, in fact, require more attention, don't they? And those members of the body which we think to be less honorable, upon these we bestow more abundant honor, and our uncomely parts have more abundant comeliness. To put a point on that, if you were, let's say, pinky toe, when was the last time you thought about your pinky toe? You only think of it every once in a while when you clip that little nail, right? Which is the most troublesome nail. He's so small, right? The only time you ever think about it. Well, if you stubbed it, just walking around barefooted right into the edge of a chair in the middle of the night, when would you think about your pinky toe? Till it stopped hurting. Right. You would give all kinds of attention to the pinky toe. You would lavish, in fact, your body does the same thing. Your body rushes blood there to help it, and antibodies and everything just running down there to make sure it's not hurt, it's going to be okay, it's going to survive, right? The church needs to do the same thing. Instead of looking at people and saying, oh, that Christian, he's backsliding. Oh, that Christian, he's fallen into sin. Oh, that Christian, he's not as strong as the rest of us. Oh, that Christian, he doesn't look so good. We don't need him here. And that's what the church did back then. And the church still often does when? Today. In fact, they should look at it and say, the church, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. We need to build them up. We need to encourage them. We need to help them. We need to welcome them in. We need to embrace them. We need to help them get to the place they need to be, right? That's what we need to do. Verse 24, for our comely parts have no need, but God hath tempered the body together, having given more abundant honor to the part which lacked. We need to help those. That's why when Jesus came, who did he focus his attention on? Specific attention on. Two groups, by the way. What are the two groups he focused his attention on? Women, yep. And the lame, and the sick, and the lepers, and the demoniacs, and those who needed it the most. And the Pharisees. Because the leaders were doing what? Not liking those people and hating those people and blind and leading the people astray, right? Because really both sides need to be made strong, don't they? And that's his point here. We need to keep working together and giving even more attention to the ones who lack. Verse 25, that there should be no schism in the body. What's a schism? No division. Unified. That should be our goal. No schism in the body, but that the members should have the same care one for another. That's our goal, isn't it? To be unified. We need to help one another. Nobody's saying I'm not important. Nobody's saying I'm all important and I don't need you. Or anybody saying, well, you're all falling apart, so we're not going to worry about you. We're just going to go do our own thing. No, that's completely false. God is going to use us all as where we're at, right? And wants us all to grow together. In fact, look at his last words here in verse 26. And whether one member suffer, all the members suffer with it. Or one member be honored, all the members rejoice with it. Right? We are all in this together. It's like a football team, right? If the New England Patriots lose the Super Bowl, who rejoices? The entire world. And if they do well, they rejoice. So we need to rejoice as one, right? Because when the church is winning, who's winning? God's winning, and the world is winning, right? As we become stronger, become the light and the salt that we're supposed to be. But we can't do it if we're just fighting with one another. If we're breaking into little cliques, if we're being selfish and worried about only ourselves, if we're judging one another and kicking people out, or people just saying, oh, I don't need to be here, or I don't need to be part of this because I'm not important. No. Who's important? Everybody. Everybody needs to be doing a job, and everybody needs to be helping one another and encouraging one another, endeavoring to keep the unity of the body, right? And that's what we are called to do. Is this easy to do? No. Any human resource person will tell you it's very hard. Any organization, it doesn't matter. Unity is one of the hardest things to achieve. Everybody working together, because it is so easy for people to start looking out for themselves. It's so easy to break into groups. It's so easy to judge. It's so easy to do. Those are natural things to do. That's why that first part of Romans chapter 12, which is what? Got to be transformed or renewing our mind, right? We need to have that change in our mind, that we don't look at this like the world looks at it. When the world looks at an organization, what do they look at? Well, who's in charge? They're important. Who's the little grunt down there? They're unimportant. That's the way the world looks at things, doesn't it? Who makes the most money? Who's important? Who's the face? Who's famous? That's the way they look at it. How does God look at it? Everybody's important. Because I've got to accomplish a lot of things in this world, and I need them all working together. That's why he gives us that wonderful example of the body. All of them working together, all of them important to be 100%. Right?